So we are glad you're here, and you actually picked an awesome Sunday to show up. It's not Mother's Day. It's not Father's Day. It's just the beginning of a new time. You can talk about 5 little stones, and a story that you probably is well known. Even if you never grew up in church, you probably heard the story and all of those things about it. And as I told you, I grew up, I went to a Nazarene church, Episcopalian church, Church of Christ, Pentecostal church, Baptist churches, about any church that was around that would pick us up or invite us. My mom and them would always make sure that we would go. And then my dad got saved in about 1962. And then we just started going to this one church, sat on the other side of town in Hamilton on the west side, sitting right on the corner of Gordon Avenue and Summer Street, and that's where I went. And so, as I've told you, when I was growing up in Sunday school, I started feeling the tug of Christ in my life when I was 8 years old. And they started talking about, you need to give your heart to the Lord and heart to Jesus. And I'm thinking, there's no way I can get this heart out of my chest to give it to him. And so when you need to change your life, and I'm thinking, what do I need to change in? And I'm only a kid. Explain to me what you're talking about. Then they would read a story and I would question them because I wanted to know the answers to all of the things that was there. And so they told this story about David and Goliath. And they said, David was a little shepherd boy, probably about 11, 12 years of age, and he was a shepherd, and that's what he did. And bear came one day and he killed the bear. And I don't know about y'all, but I have never seen anybody 12 years of age kill a bear. It's like, is this really a fairy tale or is this correct? And then he talked in there that he killed a lion. And I thought, man, if you're going to get people to listen to you, you need to learn the truth. There is no little kid that I know that's 12 years old, and I know I knew some really strong kids at 12 that could handle a bear and a lion. And then they said, and so David one day, he was there, and the story and all of that's going on, and here he is, this little boy against this 9-foot giant, and he takes and puts a rock in his sling, and he whizzes that sling around and hits him right in the middle of the head, and the dude falls down and dies. And I said, this is a bunch of garbage. This is like one of those Aesop fables. Well, it's in the Bible. I said, okay, then can you prove to me that he did it? And I drove them nuts because of things like that. And you got to think about it. You read something like that, and that sounds like something that they had made up, and it would make a good movie. For somebody to see, not the truth that was there. And so I drove them nuts for 2 years. Just story after story and things that are there. But when you begin to look at this story and when you begin to start talking about it, you find there's this unlikely hero. And it's a little kid. And you're thinking, okay, this is probably like one of those Superman tales, because you got to remember, in the late 50s and early 60s, Superman was black and white and was just turning into color, and Clark Kent did not look like any superhero that I saw. And if you go back and watch, he didn't have a six-pack. He probably weighed about 250. And it's like, really, this dude can fly and do all of these things that are there. But what we need to understand as we begin to unfold this, and that is this: every one of us are fighting giants in our lives. You may say, well, I've got it all under control. No, you don't. You're fighting a giant somewhere, someplace. You might get rest today, but you'll get hit tomorrow. You'll get blindsided by the unexpected. You're not ready for it. And then it's like, okay, so what are you going to fight with? How are you going to kill the giant in the struggle that you're going? So we need to understand that every one of us, and this message is just entitled, The Challenger. Because in all of our battles, you've got to understand, you've got a challenger. In the battle of David, his challenger was Goliath. He stood strong. All of the soldiers of David or of Saul would not fight him. They were afraid. And here's this little boy comes along. And he's going to overtake him? Come on, we're soldiers. And we're afraid of him. You can't conquer him. And sometimes that's the way you feel in your life. When you fight your challenger or your Dave or your Goliath. And so this morning, that's what we're going to talk about, is what's the Goliath in your life? Because today, it may be one Goliath. And tomorrow, it may be another one. And so in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 1 through 11, we will start, because over the next 4 weeks, we're going to cover 1 Samuel chapter 17, from verse 1 all the way through the end. So, if you give me the verses, guys, let's go. The Philistines gathered their forces for war at a place called Soko. It was in Judah, and camped between Soko and Azekah and Ephes Daman. It says Saul, who was the king, and the men of Israel gathered. And they camped in the valley of Elah. Then they lined up in battle formation to face the Philistines. Remember, you watched maybe movies or History Channel or something about the Revolutionary War, and you would see the British soldiers. They would line up in formation, and they would be like 10, 20 deep, and so they would come through there, and the first ones would fire their weapons, and when they got killed, somebody would step up in that line to take their place. This is the formation kind of they're talking about. They're fighting in some way or fashion. Theirs a lot of times was not weapons like guns, but theirs were like knives, swords, spears that they were doing. He said, then the Philistines were standing on one hill, and the Israelites were standing on another hill with a ravine between them. So one on one side, one on the other, and there's a valley with kind of go down between them. Then a champion named Goliath from Gath came out from the Philistines' camp. He was 9 feet, 9 inches tall. Now think about this for a minute. He was 3 inches short of the rim of a basketball, which are at 10 feet. He would have never had any problem whatsoever dunking the ball. And there is no way that anybody was going to block his shot. So if he was on the basketball team, you just post him underneath the goal, give him the ball, and the game's over. Or you put him in the middle and let him guard the people on the other end. He could be a one-man wrecking crew. They could pass the ball all around and he could just stand there. He didn't have to guard them. The only thing they'd have to learn how to do is shoot from the outside. And they're not, and forget about a rebound because you're never going to get it when he's standing there. So I want him on my team for that reason. And he wore a bronze helmet and a bronze scale armor that weighed 125 pounds. That was like me when I got married. I went into service at 129 pounds, I think it was. A 29-inch waist, 6 feet tall, with 3 inches around not my ankles, probably around my knees. I looked like, the string beans? Yeah, or the kind of kid that could stand sideways and stick out his tongue and he looked like a zipper. That's how skinny I was. And so I gained some weight, and then I was a little bit more than 135 pounds when I got married, okay? So there was bronze armor on the shins. So think about this, 135 pounds of armor. Now we're adding bronze armor on the shins, and a bronze javelin was slung between his shoulders. We're talking about some heavy equipment, okay? His spear shaft was like a weaver's beam. The iron point of his spear, just the point, weighed 15 pounds. And if that wasn't bad enough, he's got a shield bearer walking in front of him. Now, I have no clue how much the shield weighed. But I believe that probably you didn't see the guy behind the shield. He stood and shouted to the Israelite battle. And when he talked, it wasn't like, "Hey guys, I'm coming to fight you." We're talking 9 feet tall. I believe he probably had a masculine voice. Or if you don't like that, it's deep. And I guarantee you, when he spoke down in that ravine between those two hills, that it echoed through that valley. You probably, if you were near there anywhere, and when he spoke, it was like, what's that guy? E.F. Hutton or Schwartz or somebody, when he speaks, everybody listens. E.F. Hutton. That's who it was. But anyway, when he spoke, I guarantee you that every bird left the trees. If there was anything in the water, you probably, if you were a fisherman, you didn't have to catch them. It's just hold out your net. It would barrel through there. And he said, "Who dare you? Come out and line up in battle formation, because I'm going to be the bowling ball that's going to knock you all down." He asked them, "Am I not a Philistine? And are you not servants of Saul? Choose one of your men and have him come down against me." I guarantee you on that day, about half that army was sick. "I can't go fight. I got a cold. I can't go. My eyes are running. Oh, I got bursitis. You won't believe it, all the aches and pains I got. I can't fight this guy." And probably you had all of these other people out there, and then finally it's like down to last man standing. That's not a good thing. So if he wins, if he wins a fight against me and kills me, we will be your servants. But if I win against him and kill him, then you will be our servants and you will serve us. It's like that is not a fair fight. So then the Philistines said, I defy the ranks of Israel today. Send me a man so we can fight each other. And when Saul and all his army heard these words from the Philistine, they lost their courage and were terrified. Every day he taunted them. Come and fight. Every day they would back away and leave. And so when you begin to see the unfolding of this story, you begin to realize that we got some issues that are folding. When you look about it, we already talked, he was 9 feet tall. I have never met anyone that tall. I've seen some people that might be about 6'9". We had a kid next to us. Unfortunately, because of his being tall and his growth, he died at an early age. And because it was that caused him to grow. But he was about 7'1", 7'2". And that was when he was 7th or 8th grade. And they tried to teach him how to play basketball. And he wasn't coordinated enough to do it. So in 1 Peter chapter 5, in verse number 8, you need to understand something. This is every Goliath that is in your life. And here's what God says about it. Be sober-minded and be alert. Why? Because your adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion, looking for anyone he can devour. So let me say this to you. Goliath is coming in from the hill, going to the ravine, and he's standing there taunting you. Why? Because he's been looking for you. He's been looking for you, he's been waiting for you, and trying to say, okay, here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to eat you up. You're my supper. You're my lunch. You're my breakfast. You're my midnight snack. Because that's what I'm doing, is looking to do those things. So when we begin to look at this whole story, there's some things that we can see. Number one is this: the enemy will question. In verse number 8, Goliath asked a question of Saul and his men. Who's going to come and fight? When the adversary comes to attack you, ladies and gentlemen, the adversary, the giant in your life, is asking you a question. When that giant confronts you, they're asking you the same question. It doesn't matter what the giant is. It doesn't matter who you are. They always ask the same question. And that is this: I am coming to eat you up. Are you going to fight? And so many times what we do is we don't fight, we give in. We say, oh me, oh my, I can't fight this enemy. They overpower me. They take control of me. They begin to do those things. You say, I don't have that problem. Okay, let's talk about anger. That might be a giant in your life. And somebody makes you mad. Do you fight back? You bet I do. I tell them exactly what I think about them. Is that fighting? No. That's just getting angry back at them. And the next thing you know, yeah, you got an anger, a fight, but you're really not fighting your anger. Your anger is controlling you. The enemy won. Ate you up. And sometimes we just don't see those things that are there. And one thing that we need to understand about the most important in relation to our battle with the enemies is doubt. Because what do we do when we get attacked? I don't think I can handle this. God, I know you said you'll be with me always, even until the end of the age. But God, I don't see you there. I don't feel you there. And the worst thing that you can do, ladies and gentlemen, is to fight the enemy on feelings. Your feelings today will change. They can be changing every minute, every second, every hour. Depending upon outside circumstances, your feelings change. And you may be getting devoured by the enemy, and you think that God has deserted you. And if God has deserted you, then God is a liar. Because he has given us a promise through his son Jesus. I will never leave you nor desert you. And let me say this to you. This is where a lot of people think, will I lose my salvation? If you lose your salvation, ladies and gentlemen, then the Holy Spirit has to leave you. And if the Holy Spirit comes and goes, then Jesus lied to us. I don't care what anybody tells you. Your salvation is not determined based upon your actions after you got saved. Your salvation is based and sealed on what Jesus did on the cross, not what you did on the cross, and your faith and trust in him, not in you. If it was, none of us would stay saved. Because the Bible in Hebrews, according to some, says if you've tasted of this and you fall away, it is impossible for you to come back again. So I argue with them extensively. If someone can get saved and then lost, they cannot get saved again. And I don't know anybody except the thief on the cross that got saved and went to heaven perfect. There's probably been some others that on their deathbed, the last thing that they said was, Jesus, save me. He saved them, and they didn't do anything but went to heaven or went to be with Jesus. None of us have done that. So if that's what it is, then we all should just go home. But what we do is we begin to doubt. So there's been times in my life, and I've shared with you, I had a picture, and I think I had it up there. If you looked, Diana had her head stuck out the window of the car, and it was at my baptism when I was 16 years of age. Okay? And then the guy that married us, the guy that performed the ceremony, was standing there because he was also the guy that baptized me at that point in time when I was 16. That was one of those doubts times. Because I got saved when I was 10. I got called into the ministry to preach at 16. I can't do this, God, because I don't even think I'm saved. That's my excuse to get out of it. You can't preach as a lost person, so no, I don't want to do this. So I went and got baptized. Me, who's afraid of water. I got dunked twice. But the only problem was I was taller than them, and when they baptized me the second time, my nose did not get cleaned because my nose was sticking up out of the water. So the rest of my body is clean, but not my nose. So if when you get to heaven, and if there's some guy walking around with no nose, it's me. Okay? But I doubted. And I struggled with that. Later on, when I was preaching, I would doubt. Is this really? Did you misunderstand the call? Maybe he wanted you to do something else and you got the wires crossed. And I struggled with that giant for a long time. For a long time. Until finally I got the answer. And that's what happened. So we all have this natural tendency to doubt from time to time. If you go to Genesis chapter 3 and verse number 1, this was the first time, but not the last time. There were two individuals in the garden that we know of. God had come down and talked to them and shared with them. But now all of a sudden someone else is showing up. And this is beginning to talk to them and put little sweet sayings in their ears. And now beginning to make them doubt about what God had said. Now the serpent was the most cunning of all the wild animals that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say that you can't eat from any tree in the garden? Is that what he said? Or did he say this tree or that tree? Well, you can eat of all of these trees. Is he telling you he can't? Did he really say you can't eat from this tree? And then all of a sudden, she's beginning to doubt. Well, hold on a minute. That's what God told Adam, and Adam told me. Is that really what Adam heard? And you think about it for a while. How many times have you been in a conversation, both of you, or just one of you, and they come back to you and start telling you about the conversation, and how many times have you said to them, is that really what they said? And after a while, you can convince the other person that that's not what you really heard. And this is what Satan's doing. And this is what Satan did. And this is what he does to all of us. You see, in the battle that was going on with Goliath, you've now got them asking the same question. And their heads are dropping. You know, when he says, who are you going to send to fight me? And they're all sitting there wondering and what's going on. And I can probably just imagine some of the conversations or thoughts that were going on. I'm 6 foot and I'm looking up at this guy that's 9 feet 6 inches tall, or 9 inches tall. He's 9'9", 3 inches short of 10 feet. And I'm looking at that guy and he's inviting me to play basketball, and I'm looking at that and say, why? This is a waste of my time. There is no way I can defend this guy in a one-on-one. Now, if there was 4 or 5 of us, we might be able to take it. But we're talking one-to-one. He didn't say send out 5 people or 10 people or send out your whole army. He says one-to-one. When the devil or the giant that's fighting you may not be the same giant that's fighting someone else. And even if it's the same issue, it's still not the same giant. It is a one-on-one situation. And he's asking, who's going to do that? Who? And they're shaking their head and they're saying, not me. I can't do this. I can't defeat him. This is a waste of time. There is nobody in our army that can beat this guy. Every day, the same challenge. Every day, the same reply. Every day, the same results. They all go back home. Every day. And they continue to do these things. And you know what? It's absolutely amazing. They were absolutely correct. They could not defeat Goliath on their own. And may I say this to you, the giant that you're facing in your life, you can't do it on your own. And that's the problem. We try to attack the giant in our life, and we are not capable of defeating that giant. I love it when people try to tell me, you know what? I finally did it. I kicked the habit. After 7 years, I'm free of that. I did it. I'm thinking, really? How long did it take you? Well, it took me 7 years. You know, you could have done that in 7 minutes. With God on your side. But you know how much time in our life we waste trying to fight our battles ourselves. When Jesus said, I will be with you always. I don't know about you, but I would rather have the person fighting my battle who controls the whole universe and all of the angels. And they got to do what he tells them to do. Did it take me a while to learn that lesson? Yes. Do I sometimes forget that lesson? Yes. Is there sometimes I still get mad? Absolutely. And then I have to come back around and say, what a waste of 3 days. That was stupid. We could have had this done a long time ago, but we don't. I think I told you, and I've shared with you, I have an anger issue. I really do. You just don't see it. And that's the Goliath in my life. And for the longest time, I'm not coming to church. That's your business. I don't care. I can have it. You don't have to show. Or, I'm going to be at church on Sunday. They don't show. Yeah. Really trustworthy, aren't they, buddy? Got a great lot of people there, don't you? Oh, yeah. I'll do this, I'll do that. And they don't do it. And I'd get mad. And I'd get upset. It's got to be done. Who else is going to do it? Nobody. Yeah, it's making me do it. Wear yourself out. And you do. And you get mad at people. And then you realize, hold on a minute. Does that really need to be done? Really? Why are you getting mad at them? It gets done, it gets done. And if it doesn't, God will do what God does. So why are you getting angry and upset with everybody? You ever seen a preacher get in the pulpit mad? If you've been around here, you have. There are sometimes that will occur. But sometimes people will think you're mad and you're not mad. You know, my wife asked me, I think it's just this look I have. Because people will ask, Are you upset with me? Are you upset? And I look at him and I don't know what my expression is on the other side because I'm not looking in a mirror, okay? And I'll say, no, I'm fine. Well, you just don't look fine. Well, how do I look? Sick? You know? No, you look like you're mad. I'm still trying to figure out what does mad look like. But I've learned. I've been married for 50 years. And when you do something, you remember as a kid growing up, mom gives you the look. Okay? After 50 years of marriage, I understand the look. It's okay. She's upset with you, buddy. You better figure it out real quick. Or else it's not going to be good. So one of the things that happens is Joshua chapter 1 and verse number 9 says, do not be afraid, don't be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Okay, that was in the Old Testament. And then Jesus reiterates that in the New Testament. So here's what the enemy does. The enemy not only causes us to doubt, but the enemy will condemn. Okay? Acts chapter 1, verse number 8. Look at this. This verse is a connection between the first 7 verses and the following parts of Acts chapter 1, which is actually a continuation out of the book of Luke. Okay? And here's what it says. It starts talking about all of these things are going to happen to you. You're going to be persecuted. You're not going to be liked. And all of these things are going to happen. He starts out telling them, oh, listen, y'all going to come to know Jesus. And you think it's going to be fine and dandy and everything's going to be honky-dory? It ain't going to happen. You're going to be put in jail. You're going to be taken down, ridiculed, made fun of, persecuted in the worst ways. And you're thinking, hold on a minute. I thought that when I accepted Christ, everything was going to be good. No, it's not. No. I don't know who was this story that people's telling you, but it's not going to be good. It's bad. But, he says, with all of this persecution and everything that's going on, and people telling you, I don't know if you heard the news. 12-year-old boy, elementary school, goes to school, talks like he always does. His mom gets a letter from the principal saying, your son is suspended from school because he is sexually harassing the other students. 12 years old and sexually harassing the other students. That's not my son. What in the, and she asks him, he gets home with the letter and she says, what are you doing? He says, I have no clue. All I know is the principal called me in his office, gave me the paper, said I can't come back to school for like 5 days, and here's the letter. The mom read it, called the principal. What is this all about? He's sexually harassing all of the other students. What do you mean? He's 12 years old. How is he sexually harassing the rest of the students? He's not calling them by the proper pronoun. They don't want to be called he and she, him and her. And until he learns to call the other students by the pronouns that they want to be called, he is not welcome in our school. Minnesota. Tell me this world ain't stupid. And as my mom said, we're living in a world that's going to hell in a handbasket. But I don't think it's a handbasket. I think it's a big cruise liner. It's got to be the biggest thing that you can find to get all of these crazies on there. Okay? But if you were to understand the characteristics, and if you were to take Goliath on one side and the Israelites on the other side and make a thing about all of the things, characteristics of these two people as to who could win this battle, you would find that the list for Goliath would be a lot bigger than the list for the Israelites. And that's the same way in your life. When you begin to start making this, we would see that the giant has the advantage. But we've got something that the giant doesn't have. And that's God on our side. And when we've got God on our side, ladies and gentlemen, there is no giant that can come into your life to defeat you as long as God's in control. When we're in control, we're done. We're done. And what begins to happen? We begin to doubt. So how do I get rid of the doubt? I learn to trust. You say, well, you don't understand. How many people have let me down? I can't trust. I can't trust. My question to you is this: when did God let you down? Well, that time 50 years ago when we didn't have any food. And we've been there. I think I shared the story. We had gotten married. Diana had moved up waiting for our house that was supposed to be done on June the 1st, and it didn't get done till June the 30th. But she had already come up, and she was staying with my sister and brother-in-law at the time we were there. And then it was like, no, we got to do this, so we spent our last money in a motel, and it wasn't Roach Motel, was it? But it was pretty bad. It was not the best of place that you would want to take your new wife, okay? And I had already gotten paid. I think I had even gotten an advance. I couldn't get another advance. I was going into debt to the Army, of getting paid. And we had our last dollar, I think it was. And you remember back in the 70s when you could get a combo meal. Yeah, you could actually get a Big Mac and fries or something for $1. Now you can get nothing for $1. Okay, but you could do that. And so she thought, okay, I'm going to eat my last meal and die. And if I'm going to go out, I might as well go out in a blaze of glory with a Big Mac and McDonald's fries, which were the best before they changed all this other junk. But there are times that we begin to doubt. And so let me say this to you. One of the biggest tasks or things that Satan will do is get you to doubt. And may I say something to you? When you begin to start doubting, Satan will bring people in your life that will agree with you. And you'll sink lower and lower and lower. Instead of associating with the right people. That's why sometimes I tell you, you come and you'll say something to me, I'll tell you, you need to start associating with some other people. The best thing that can happen is when we become Christians, we need to associate with others. That doesn't mean we leave our friends alone. We still got to talk to them. And we still want to talk and bring them into the life that God is giving us. Okay? But what you want to do is bring them to you, not let them drag you back to them. And that's the thing. So Let me finish with this real quick. Because here's the last thing that Satan does. And the giant in your life. I think I've shared with you, one of the biggest giants in my life is a fear of water. Okay? And I have no clue where this fear came from. I mean, absolutely none. Because when I was little, I never learned how to swim. But if any of you all know the area in the Great Miami River, I lived and grew up by the Great Miami River. In the summer, when the rains would come, that place would flood. And as a matter of fact, in 1913, it flooded every place where we lived. When we were doing some work with there, we saw they had newspapers, behind the wallpaper. And when we were steaming off the wallpaper, you could see the line of how that thing was about 8 feet tall on the house. And that's what it was. So they built the levee. So what would we do? We would go down there and wade around in that river. And if anybody knows anything about the Great Miami River, it has a lot of whirlpools and undertow. And you could be walking along, and the next thing you know, you go into that undertow, you're done for. You're not coming out. A lot of people didn't realize the low-level dam that was right there by New Miami, where they would have the boats up before it filled up with all the sludge and everything, that what would happen is the water would come over the dam, and it would basically take out all of the dirt and everything underneath there. You could find the living back up underneath there, the biggest catfish you would ever see. Now, if you knew how to strip out that mud vein, you would have some of the best tasting fish, until they found out that Armco was polluting. But they weren't the only one. There was Kim Dine, Ford Motor Company, and all of those that were feeding. And we're walking in this, and we're playing in this stuff. I've seen them pull out people that had drowned. And you'd be there because you knew where they would find them. We would jump trains to go to the swimming pools. But somewhere, someplace, one of my greatest fears is water. We've had pools all of our lives when our kids grew up. But I always made sure that I could get my feet on the bottom of that, and the water was never over my head. Because as long as I can get my feet, it's there. That is still, we go cruising. I love cruising, but I will not get close to that rail. Diana says, you can't fall over it. I said, I guarantee you I could. But I'm not going to prove you wrong. She says, well, you need to come see this. I can see exactly what I need to see from this vantage point. I'm taller than you. I can look over you. So if anybody goes over, you go first. But no. But the enemy, those giants, they will strike fear on you. They will. And sometimes we need to understand that. Matthew chapter 14, verses 24 to 28, and here's where we finish. Meanwhile, this is the story about Jesus and his disciples, and this is the conversation with Peter. Meanwhile, the boat was already some distance from land, battered by the waves because the wind was against them. Jesus came towards them, walking on the sea very early in the morning. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. Now look at this, it's early in the morning. I don't know how many of you all begin to see things at dusk. There's some eerie looking things that happen at dusk, or dawn, I'm sorry, at dawn, not dusk. When the sun's coming up, the moon's going down, and there's that point. it's still dark and things are starting to move and you're just not clear, what is that? And you're out there in the middle of the sea and it's at that point in time, and you've been out there on that sea, and that boat's been battering back and forth, and all of a sudden you look out there when things are starting to clear up and you see something, and it's walking on the water. I think they began to ask each other, what did we eat for supper last night? There's hey, who cooked? And what did you put in the food? Because I think we're hallucinating here, you know? They were terrified. And so what did they do? They hollered out, just like anybody else would do. It's a ghost. How many times have you been in your home or in somebody's home and you see something weird and somebody said, what's that? It's a ghost. It's a ghost. Peter, it's a ghost. John, it's a ghost. How about James? Hey, I'm all in. It's a ghost. It's a ghost. And so they said, they cried out in fear. Immediately, Jesus spoke to them. This ghost can speak. Hey, have courage. It's I, don't be afraid. Here's what Peter says. Lord, if it's you, you big dummy. Peter answered him, then command me to come to you on the water. If I'm in that boat, I say, yep, you go for it, Peter. You've been doing all the conversation. You go find out. I'm not getting out of this boat. There's water out there. And that water, it's not nice, you know. It's a little bit choppy. And there's a couple things that I learned in school, and that is, you can't walk on water. That's a dumb question, Peter. But you make dumb statements before, so go for it. So what happened? They're all afraid. Peter steps out. And he was okay until he took his eyes off of Jesus. And then he saw the giant. And then he got afraid. That's what happens, ladies and gentlemen. We take our eyes off of Jesus and we get afraid. And this morning, I don't know what's going on with you, but I can tell you this. The Bible is filled. The Bible is filled. Listen to me closely. The Bible is consistently filled with how to determine that that is Jesus speaking. I hear people all the time tell me, I don't know if this is God or not. Let me be perfectly clear to you that when God speaks, it is consistent. It is consistent. And when you look at that and you say, hold on a minute, this doesn't sound like God. It isn't. It isn't. Because if you're a child of God, you will know his voice. How do I know that? He tells me so. My children, which are called by my name, will know my voice, and they will not follow any other. So the question is, when the fear starts attacking, where's your focus? Where's your focus? I'll tell you, your eyes are starting to wander. And God's saying, come on, back in focus. we need to